is that that plane went down at whatever it was, 1:20 a.m. over the South China Sea about an hour after it took off. And that the reason what I actually think happened, but this I don't really have evidence on, except for that it makes a lot of sense in three different ways. I think that lithium ion batteries were in the cargo hold, which they were, that's for sure, and that they caught fire. I mean, some people say it was because they were next to this like super gaseous mangosteen fruit. I don't know about that, but they caught fire, and uh and that's what blew the plane up. Basically, they have fire control systems, but there were a lot of them in there, and whatever, it just couldn't actually. Even if you put the fire out, have you ever seen that Russian plane that it was like 7 people died on it? It went up. It was a cargo plane. It went up and then it just fucking slid back out of the sky. There was a dash cam. Did you ever see that? It's horrible. Like, it's horrifying to look at. And what happened was that somebody hadn't, they think, strapped down the cargo correctly. So when the plane took off, the cargo shifted and it just pulled the plane out of the sky. So even if they put the fire out, if it had caused a major redistribution of weight, it probably would not, there's a chance it could not have kept flying. That's what I think happened. It went on fire, and that's when it like left the sky. And I think that makes sense because, well, also very shortly thereafter, or within a year, lithium ion batteries were banned from all cargo. So they don't let you put that in the cargo. And so I think that's another indication. I also think it explains why there would have been this massive cover-up. Oh, and a really important piece of evidence is that an oil rig worker saw the plane burning. And so we're going to talk about that. But the reason I think they would have done this is, and the US got involved immediately, is that if it had been lithium ion batteries, that would, I think, have been considered negligent. Like, you would have lawsuits on your hands because other places had already banned them or had warnings about them. And I think we were one of the countries that already didn't allow it. I'm not sure. But it was people knew they were dangerous. And then the reason that they would want to switch the reasoning and say that is not what happened is that negligence would have opened them up to whatever it was, 300, the people who died, 300 lawsuits of like tremendous proportion. So you could have hundreds of millions of dollars, like every single 300 wrongful death lawsuits. Clear negligence could really cost. And in my mind, it's not that it costs Malaysian Airlines or Malaysia or their insurance company, but insurance companies are reinsured. So if you have like a local insurance company, a lot of times all the insurance, if not all the time, could be, I don't know a ton about the insurance industry, but I know that smaller insurance companies are reinsured by bigger companies such as Lloyd's of London, for example. So that Lloyd's of London can aggregate worldwide risk. Whereas if there's a huge hurricane or whatever typhoon in Malaysia, you want to be able to say, well, we also do like Alaska. We get premiums from Alaska. So you just, whatever. So my thinking is that it's Lloyd's of London who really would be on the hook if that insurance company went bankrupt or whatever. I don't know. But those are the ideas of why I think it was that and why I think they covered it up. And I can tell you, I have like pieces of evidence of why I think it went down right there where it stopped, transmitting.
So the batteries, were they, what were they doing with the batteries?
They were shipping them. It was cargo. It was like a UPS shipment of batteries, not UPS, but you know what I'm saying? It was just boxes. It was for sale. It was wholesale merchandise, whatever it was. It
And
wasn't like a bunch of laptops,
and
I don't think.
at the time you could ship them?
They allowed it on their plane, but some places didn't allow that already. Like, some people had identified the potential danger or had rules surrounding it. But after that, I wonder if I have that article. So what happened is this was so long ago, it's like 2014 or something, that was before my WordPress site got blown up. And so I had to like piece together my old thing, archive.org, and everything's 404. Like, there's hardly anything. But there was an article like I had in my notes there that was like a year later basically there was an international ban on lithium ion batteries. But I believe that's what happened. That most horrible tragedy I ever heard in my life was, well, next to the USS Indianapolis, but which I don't know if you know what that was. Oh gosh, that was horrible, but we won't talk about that right now. So off the coast of LA was a liveaboard, like a diving boat, and however many people there were, in a couple of dozen people, and they all were charging their phones in the galley, and just it was just too hot, and the phones went up and burned the boat and trapped all the people inside the boat. So they like burned alive and then drowned. It was fucked up. And it was like, I've been on liveaboards, like it really hit close to home. Like, wow, that's a horrible story. But that's an example of how lithium ion batteries just they blow up. And actually, Ashton Forbes was talking about that. He acknowledged that they were in there. He acknowledges that there was a fire, but he said that the plane survived it. And at that point, like lost contact. But I don't believe. I don't believe it could stop. I don't think that it would destroy the black box. I think they knew the black box, and actually where it was, and I think the South China Sea or wherever it went, which was like on the border of the South China Sea and the Gulf of Thailand or something, that it's like relatively shallow water, that they could have found the plane pretty quickly. And I think they did. And the US sent a warship there immediately. And if you look at where the search area for months and years and weeks and whatever, actually eliminated the place where the plane was. Like I can show you pictures of that. Like they would not allow people to search where I think the plane actually was, because they don't want them to see the black box. They don't want them to see what really happened.
I made you a co-host just in case you did want to
I
chip.
saw that. If I had thought about it, I would have, because the pictures I have suck so bad that like I printed them all out. So like you can see, but I didn't I think I resuscitated most of my links, but I didn't put any, there's nothing pulled up. I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's all right.
You can handle it.
So
I can send you the links so people can look at them.
so the theory is, so why would everybody help with the cover up if it was just the
Yeah, I think, and I think this is pretty much true for everything, that there's a couple of governments that might have known about it, like, or had suspicions. Vietnam, China, and Malaysia would have known, and maybe Thailand would have, I don't know about Thailand, would have known. We're pressured by the US to just mind their own fucking business. And it's possible that the people who, more than half the people on the plane were Chinese. And it's possible that both China and Malaysia had an interest in insulating themselves from that kind of liability, and that they didn't even need to know. Like the US government could say, hey, mind your own fucking business. We're going to take care of the search. We're going to pay for it. We're going to make sure you guys don't get sued. Don't cause any trouble. And when you see like China cooperated with the US on like COVID-19 and Event 201, like they do it. They do it. So, I mean, if it's in their mutual interest. And I think Vietnam wanted to help, but they just were, pushed out of the way. But I have also, and maybe we gave them money. Maybe we gave them money to give their little military exercises and stuff. Like, you don't know, because that search, I don't know if we paid for all of it, but it cost us money. The search that definitely was not where the people was. It was like the Boston Marathon bombing. Immediately after they like lifted the shelter in place and called off the search, Jahar Sanayev was found immediately, because they were not looking where he was. So, I mean, that I wouldn't put that past him. But I have a few reasons that I think that it went down where they said it went down. So you want me to walk you through them? There's like 5 of them.
Yeah, sure.
Okay. So the first one is a big one. It's a guy named Mike McKay. He was an oil rig worker, and he wrote this email. Gentlemen, I forget who it was to. Anyway, it doesn't matter. I believe I saw the Malaysian Airlines plane come down. The timing is right. I tried to contact the Malaysian and Vietnam officials several days ago, but I do not know if the message has been received. I'm on the oil rig Sangha Merkur off Vung Tau. The surface location of the observation is latitude, blah, 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 north latitude, blah, 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 blah. I observed the plane burning at high altitude and on a compass bearing of 265 to 275 from our surface location. It's very difficult to judge the distance, but I would say 50 to 70 kilometers along the compass bearing 260 to 275. While I observed the burning plane, it appeared to be in one piece. The surface, he's trying to help them find it. So that's why he's giving all the specific information, which is very helpful. The surface sea current at our location is 2 to 2.3 knots in a direction of 225 to 230. The wind direction has been northeast, east, northeast, averaging 15 to 20 knots. From when I first saw the burning plane until the flames went out, still at a high altitude, was 10 to 15 seconds. So the plane burned at high altitude 10 to 15 seconds. There was no lateral movement. So it was either coming towards our location, falling, or going away. So it didn't move side to side at all. So he couldn't tell it was going towards him, away from him, or coming straight down. He said the general position of the observation was perpendicular southwest of the normal flight path. So it was, I can't imagine that. He said, we see the contrails every day. It was southwest of the normal flight path. And it was at a lower altitude than normal flight path. On the compass bearing, or it was on the compass bearing 265, intersecting the normal flight paths and at a normal altitude, but further away. So he gives all this information. He saw the burning plane. So the idea that it was lithium ion batteries makes complete sense because the plane had a massive, fast, bright fire. And then 10 or 15 minutes, 10 or 15 seconds later, either it could maybe got blown out because, put a hole in the hull and just got sucked away, or perhaps the really intense fire control systems they have down there kicked in, but not before it was too late to be catastrophic to the plane. And okay, so that was at 1:20-ish, around when the plane disappeared. So also at that time, Malaysian. So then I also have evidence of the cover-up. So I'm telling you why I think it went down there, and then I'll tell you where the cover-up is.
Yeah, Ashton does. He did talk about the fire. I think that is part of his theory.
Well, he incorporates it into his theory, but it's not. He just says the plane went out, the fire went out. You know what I'm saying? Like it's not germane to his theory.
Yeah,
he just has to explain it.
yeah.
But for me, the fire is what happened.
Yeah, it's funny because there is I mean that your theory does actually make the most sense. I mean, in regards to just like corporations covering up their, things for benefit. I mean, they've done that since the beginning of time, since the beginning of corporations. So it's like realm of possibility. But what's your theory on why allegedly they said they couldn't find any debris? Any theories on the specific people that were on the plane that people
No, I think all of those are unfounded conspiracy theories meant to get people. Isn't that hilarious? Yeah, my conspiracy theory is that the conspiracy theories are conspiracy theories. So yeah, it was a conspiracy to get us completely off track from what really happened, which is very, very simple. Not only did that oil rig guy see it, but 8 villagers who were outside on the beach heard it at the exact same moment. They heard a loud noise coming from the right direction at the exact time, and they all thought, and all of them went to the police at that time and said it sounded like the fan of a jet engine. It said the loud and frightening noise came from the northeast of Pulau Kapas, and we ran in that direction to find out the cause. We looked around the beach, but did not see anything unusual. They thought it would be helpful to locate the missing aircraft. So another villager said when he heard the noise, he thought a tsunami was about to strike. My friends and I heard the ringing noise for about 2 minutes. I decided to lodge the police report after seeing the media report. So it was, how long does it take for a plane to burn and crash? I don't know. But 2 minutes actually sounds like a long time. So, yeah, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, and then the cell phone calls, right? You've heard conversations about that, about family members saying that they could still call the cell phones and they were still ringing and going.
Right, right. But you're not actually hearing the cell phones, are you? You're hearing the ring on your side of the cell phone. You know
Well,
what I'm saying? Like if a ringer is off or a phone is off, do you hear it ring when you call somebody or does it not ring? It rings. So if the service was still on, you know what I mean? Your phone does not determine whether or not your phone rings.
yeah, I'm just curious because I'm thinking about like if I call somebody and their cell phone's not working, like I think
I
you're
mean,
right.
you could do it right now. I can turn my phone completely off and you can call it.
Oh, let's find out.
All right. I'm going to text you via my laptop. I'll email you. I'll email you so I don't. uh, I'll email you my phone number. Oh, you have my phone number. Oh, great.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
just call me. So it's not going to, it's off. My phone is absolutely off. So it's not going to. You have reached 21. You have to, you can't tell people my
Oh, I cut that out.
Not that I wouldn't mind if people called me, but
Cut it out.
trolls, I'm
Yeah,
happy to talk to people.
I'll cut it out. Yeah,
Okay, so it went straight to voicemail.
it went right. Yeah, I
And
didn't.
is that what we're saying? Is that are they saying that that
They
would or would not happen?
It rang. They said it actually rang like it was
Okay.
kind of like the phone was still in service because what people are saying, I guess the what they're saying is like if you lost service or if your phone breaks or if your phone whatever, it doesn't ring. Like and
Right. Well, that did just go straight to voicemail, right? It did not
yeah.
ring.
And typically, but it's weird because I for some reason I do feel like I know occasions where
Yeah.
things wrong with somebody's phone and it just keeps ringing. Like I feel like that's
Yeah. But you know what? The answer is we don't know.
we don't know.
We
No.
don't know. So whoever's telling me that that's proof positive, they have to teach me how cell phones work. You know what I mean? Like that's fine. And maybe it is that, but there's a lot of that in this new story. Well, if you knew what I knew, you would know that that can't happen. I'm like, well, people saw the plane burning. They heard it crash. And then there was visual evidence of the crash underneath that place. So Vietnam had originally, or was it China? They had pictures. So this, because it was in the dark, they couldn't start the search in the dark. But they did see and take pictures of a door, like that door that blew out of the Alaska Airlines thing, a kind of plug door. There was a door floating because it's a floating thing, and a piece of the tail was seen floating, and pictures were taken. I don't remember seeing the picture of the tail, but I saw the picture of the door. And I did this like a week after it happened. So that's when it was very easy to find these initial reports. Now that stuff's been what do you call like Google bombed, where no matter what you look up on MH370, if you looked up the tail, it would tell you, oh, it was found on an island 5,000 miles away or whatever, which I don't believe. And even Ashton Forbes, I think, says that you can't verify that that like later sighting of the tail was real. But this was the next day where it should have been, it was a door and tail of a big plane like that. And then another thing was that there were two massive oil slicks that were consistent with the two full fuel tanks, engines, um, losing integrity at altitude because it was so it's an oil slick. You could see the slick, but if it was right in the water, it wouldn't be that big. But if it's high and you just have this like strip of oil coming down, it would be more dissipated. So they're saying the oil slicks they saw were consistent with the rest of the story, the plane losing integrity at high altitude.
So
Yeah,
when the locations where so there's some debris was found.
right underneath where it should have been, right there, and there's a picture of it, and they're just saying it wasn't that, and we can't find it now.
Hmm.
So, I mean,
And then the black
they're
box
not looking. Yeah.
was
So,
supposed to be a part of the cover up was just obviously getting
right. So here's where the cover up comes in. So they immediately, like the US warship went there. And what you'll see is, okay. So this is a crazy picture. I know I should have a screen thingy, but I'm not. Anyway, so, but you see that this arc here, and then there's this hole in it. See, there's an arc and there's a hole in it. Okay. So the arc represents a signal, a very low information signal that the plane let out at 1:20 a.m. or like around then, whatever its last like ping. Part of the cover up is that we are told that that was a signal that came at like 8 in the morning, which it wasn't. But anyway, so that hole I showed you, so that the actual signal is a the plane just beeps, it pings at a satellite, just pings at a satellite. They can determine the angle at which that ping is received on the satellite. That's it. And what plane it is. That's all it says is MH370, I'm 45 degrees away. So to have that angle, and here's the satellite, the plane can be anywhere along this 45-degree line. So if it's really high at like 60,000 feet, it's going to be up here. If it's really low at like 20,000 feet, it's going to be down here. So the way they visually represent what a ping means to a satellite is they just show concentric circles. They can't even tell the direction of where that thing, just the ping, just the angle. So if it was 45 degrees here or here or here, all of that, there's just basically a cone of possible locations. So I don't know if you remember, but for the longest time, you would see this ping map. You could look it up right now. Even if you just write Inmarsat, it'll come up with the MH370 ping map. And they show, instead of showing a cone, they show concentric circles. And they say, these are the 8 pings. But concentric circles that form a cone represent one ping. And as a matter of fact, I was starting to question my own sanity, but I found a Washington Post article just this morning. I don't know where I found it, just this morning from the time contemporary, like March 2014, saying by now, if you've been following the story, you've probably seen this map. And he shows the ping map and he says, why all of these rings represent a single ping? Why aren't they showing us all 8 pings? They're saying that he doesn't say they're saying it's 8 pings. He's actually trying to bust them without losing his job because it's the Washington Post. He's like, if you would show us all the pings, then we ourselves could probably map out where the flight path, but you're just showing this one ping. So I'm validated that there's just that flight, that thing is just one ping. So their big argument, the two big arguments that the thing was still in the air. One was there was this military radar bleep like an hour later of an unidentified object. And that's just what it was, an unidentified object. There's absolutely no reason to think it's MH370 at all. And then the other reason is that it got 8 pings, but it didn't. It got one ping. There's no evidence there was more than one ping. And so what I'm saying is they know what altitude it was at. So when you have those concentric circles that make the cone, according to that angle of the ping, if you know the altitude of the plane, and there are like flight tracker and stuff shows the altitude of the plane right up until it blinks out, it's like 35,000 feet. You know what circle it was on. So that's the circle that it was actually on. And right there, where they cut a hole in the circle is where it went down, is where the plane actually is. But this line that has the hole in the middle defines the search area. They literally, and you can see many maps that show that, some maps that don't, but some maps that do, that the only place they did not search was exactly where it went down. And they used that cone ping map thing to act like that is all the possible locations of the plane, but it's not. There's only one possible location of the plane because those things represent different altitudes. And they know the altitude. So anyway, that's how I know they're covering it up. The ping is the thing.
Watched any of the videos that they refer to Ashton, and I think Dave Zed was also in his conversations with them. Some of the videos saw some weird things, and that led to some other wild theories on what possibly could have happened to the plane. Do you think those are fake? Do you think that they're over analyzing them? What's your thoughts?
This is all I can say is I have absolutely no idea of what I'm seeing or nor can I validate anything they tell me about those. What they tell me is, I don't know about Dave. I didn't listen to Dave. I listened to Ashton. What he says is, trust me, believe me. I've talked to the experts. I had a tweet here just yesterday. I flagged the tweet because of I knew we were going to talk about this. Let me see if I can pull it up pretty quickly. And I'm not trying to um mess with that guy at all. I'm just saying,
I like Ashton, but I feel like he's trying to sell you on his theory,
yeah, but and why?
on his theory, because I think his whole like his whole life was something else, and now this is his life, and it's become his identity. And he was on was it the Concrete podcast or the Danny Jones podcast? He was on there, and the host kind of pushed back a little bit on him, in certain moments, and he seemed it seemed like a little of an awkward interaction at times, and it didn't seem like he liked to be pushed back too much, but they did engage, and I give the host a lot of credit for pushing back, because I think sometimes as a host, maybe you've experienced this a little bit yourself too. But my personal experience is sometimes when you like a guest and somebody takes time out of their busy day to come on, you try not to push back too much, because you don't want them
Of
to
course.
impression. You don't want, sometimes, and that's the thing from like a host perspective. It's like sometimes you want to push back more because you want to expose some more information, or get to a maybe more interesting part of the conversation where there are some conflicting ideas, and you want to share that with the audience, not so much because you're trying to invite somebody on just to make them look bad, or debate them, or argue with them, or whatever, or prove them wrong, or whatever it may be. But I like the fact that he did push back a little, because I think we should all be comfortable with people pushing back with our ideas and theories. But that was a interesting podcast. He seems, at times like he's convinced, like he's planted his flag here with this theory, and because of it, anything that like there's time to me, something that I always look for in debates or disagreements, anytime people disagree, is like if somebody you're talking to makes a valid point, do you ignore it? Do you try to deflect it and move on to your point, and completely ignore that they made a valid point? Or do you acknowledge and be like, you know what? Yeah, that's possible, or that is a valid point? Because to me, that kind of shows a little bit of your intentions. Like, okay, are you here to sell your perspective, or are you here to actually have a conversation where we can, maybe even admit that we're wrong in some cases? So to me, that's kind of the feeling I get from him sometimes, is like when Danny Jones would like push back a little bit, and I think that is his name, right? Danny Jones, the host. When he would push back a little bit, like he, instead of being like, okay, maybe you're right, or even with Tim Pool, because Tim Pool would do it at times, instead of being like, you know what, no, he's like, I'm certain because I talked to a scientist and I know this guy, and it's like, well, the point that Tim's making could be just as possible as the point that you're making, but you seem like so certain that now,
Dug in. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
that it's making me a little bit cautious about, are
Well,
you,
yeah,
yeah.
to your point, like this was I don't know if this was from yesterday, but I saw it yesterday, April 4th, I guess so, or maybe even sooner. Anyway, Ashton Forbes, just X Ashton, um, on Twitter says, the reason I'm 100% certain the MH370 videos are real is because they are consistent with science that I didn't even know existed when I first started the investigation back in August 2023. I did interviews with scientists, both electrical engineers and physicists, who were eager to talk to me because they knew I intuitively understood the science without knowing the specifics. When I spoke to Salvatore Pay in my first Hard Truths podcast, I didn't really know any of the people he was talking about. That's not the case anymore. With the help of the MH370X team, I've been learning the science of electrical engineering and studying the history of scientists going all the way back to Tesla. Tesla understood electrical engineering before the equations were even written. Technology beyond our wildest dreams is possible. As I've always stated, you don't have to believe me. Everything I show you is verifiable information, in addition to the science itself. I encourage everyone to teach themselves, because if we do that, the truth will be self-evident. If I can do it, you can do it too. But I don't have the time to do that. So what you're really asking the millions of people who've heard the story is to believe what you just said there. And that, what he said, is the exact reason that I absolutely cannot verify it at all, because it's just it's absolutely dependent on knowing things that I don't have the time to learn.
Yeah, well, and like most science, it's also like a lot of times
Trust.
people, yeah, it's like
Yeah, it's
unless
faith.
you're, yeah, it's it's fake basically. Well, maybe I wouldn't use the word fake. I just think it's like,
Faith, faith,
oh, faith. Okay,
faith.
yeah, faith.
Yes, just trust the science. Trust me. I think he literally says, trust me in one of these things. Like,
That's what people
trust
don't.
me. I can't.
The
It's
thing about,
fine, but I'm not going to say I believe you because I don't. Why should I?
yeah, yeah, no, I agree 100%. And but you're right, like just about all, like people, it's so wild to me because people look at science like it is the only concrete positive thing that we have on this planet, right? It's like, oh, well, you can't debate this because it's science. And it's like, no, 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 no. Like that's everything is a theory. Like it's based on like our understanding of things and testing and studies and other thinkers bringing their theories together to come to this conclusion. But that conclusion we could find out eventually is completely wrong, and like somebody tweeted this to me recently, and I'm like, I'm like, I say this all the time, and I'm like, you're absolutely right. They're like they feel like there's nothing new. We're only rediscovering old wisdom and old technology and old knowledge of our past. And I've I think we've had this conversation but last time you're on and probably many times before that, like just how many secrets there are, in our history and, how many things, knowledge and information and the way the universe really works, like how much of it can be suppressed from the public. That's why when you look at flat earthers, like, I'm like, I don't blame them. I'm like, they're lying to us about everything. I mean, Tesla.
But I have like five different personal experiences that make me not believe in the flat earth because that can be actually, as that induction, I think it's like where you can actually verify it with your own senses, which I think you can do with the flat earth thing. And I don't think you can do it here. But anyway, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, so how do you how can you verify it?
Oh, I've just had a few experiences. One thing is I was on the Concorde once. The Concorde was like a rocket basically, and they used to call it the rocket anyway. And you're so high that you actually see the curvature of the Earth. That was one thing. So I just observed it with my own
When you say
eyes.
you're so high that they gave you weed before
It's
you
like
went.
60 that no, I was exhausted. I got through one glass of champagne. No, 60,000 feet, which might have been very fun to be high. But no, I was only high in one way. I was way up there and I saw it. You could really see it. And that's one thing. Another time, this is all when I was an investment banker and did a lot of traveling. I I had a job. I had to go to Indonesia for something for like a bankruptcy. And I decided to leave from New York, which is where I was, go east. And then, even though it really cost me, because on that leg I did Singapore Air, which, oh my gosh, I'm just, wow. Like, I'm sure they had like a brothel upstairs. I didn't get upstairs, but it was just the most incredible experience of my life. But I didn't take it back because I wanted to keep going east. So I went and then I went home east and like where the sun rose and everything like all made sense. So I circumnavigated the globe personally in a couple of days time. And then I had a listener who was in the service, and I've since verified this or whatever. Like my father's in the Navy, so I feel like he would know if it wasn't true. That the ships, the warships can fire guns they can be below the horizon. So like if you're the target, you cannot make visual contact with it, but it can still shoot you, but it has to take into account the curvature of the earth. So it's all the way down here. It would shoot straight up and then the thing falls. But because you're actually so far away that the curvature of the earth makes a difference. Otherwise you would be visible across the horizon. You have to set your sights. You have to set your target to be to include the fact that it will fall away more than just gravity because you also have that curve. So these are just some of the reasons that I feel like, okay, now if you want to, we can take it another round if you want. But for me, that's where I'm landing because that's what the evidence tells me. Same thing with this MH370 thing. Like, I understand everything they're saying. It makes complete logical sense to me. There's no piece of information that does not fit here, including basic truths about greed and lies, you know?
Yeah, I guess the only part of the theory that I think would be that I'm still trying to grasp a little bit is just how so many people were involved in the cover up and what would their incentives be in helping out with the cover up. But if that's the only thing that I
No one was involved in the cover up. Very few people were involved in the cover up, in my opinion. I have very few people. I think because the warship got there and kept anyone from, I don't know if it did that, but I assume it just kept anyone. It was not in the search area. It was not in the search area. So absolutely nobody outside the original, like Malaysian authorities. And remember, they then did the other false Malaysian airline thing over Ukraine. And I believe the PM, was it the Malaysian guy who got deposed? That like the Wall Street Journal went after him. And I believe the Malaysian guy was removed from power. So I think they had a lot of blackmail on Malaysia. Like I think that government was always under pressure anyway and just wasn't going to take anymore. I mean, that Ukraine thing was complete nonsense. And nobody, like, that was kind of covered up. I mean, nobody says, well, obviously it was full of cadavers and the US shot it down. Like nobody says that, even though that is probably what happened. I don't know. So I feel like not too many people would be involved in the cover up. And South China Sea is a highly disputed area. So it is possible that right where it wasn't, wasn't in total control of China or wherever. China would definitely get in bed because that's a quid pro quo thing. It's why Putin doesn't out ISIS as a US operation, because he uses it for his own propaganda.
that makes sense. Yeah. Yeah. No, I was pondering on all the theories and I really was hoping we could talk about space time and
Yeah. Well, you'll have to save that to Dave because I was thinking that like I can't counter, like my version of the story is completely like mutually exclusive from theirs. But I wanted to say something about when when you deal with when you have guests and you don't want to push back and stuff. So this is something that's happened to me on my own show, on Union of the Unwanted, whatever. Like you're talking to somebody and you're thinking, hmm. Like, I don't know if this guy's completely on the level here. And I and I used to feel this about WSB too. They were really good to me. I would never throw them under the bus. Like, you're stupid to do that. They're your host. Like, although actually there was only one time that anything was ever like, please don't talk about this. And it was a personal, like, health matter of the woman who owned it or something like that. I can't remember. It was just like, it wasn't even interesting. But like, that was just, they were like, please do not. And so nobody did. That was it. That was the only time they ever suppressed me until like I was fired. But so I would never just openly be rude like that. All you can do, because you really also, you don't know for sure. Like some people can just be wrong. All you can really do is in a very friendly way, ask questions, and they are either answered to your satisfaction or they're not. And in my opinion, you don't have to like dunk on the guy. Like you could just, and I always trust the listeners to be able to get what pick up what I'm throwing down. Although I have gotten like the occasional nasty gram, like, you talk to that guy, like, don't you know he's fed or whatever. I'm like, well, I mean, yeah, that's why I asked him this question so I just think this is an opportunity to little inside baseball thing of like how I handle that situation. But I think that the answers that you get or lack of answers that you get actually do reveal as a as like a part of your journalism there that there are holes in it. There's holes in the story. But these guys, for me, the hole in the story is I can't verify any of it. And I had like, even you want to go like Occam's razor, which isn't that where like the most obvious question is the one, or if there's only one possible explanation, that is the explanation. Like that to me is this. But I'm on the same page with Ashton in that like he dismisses all the later sightings And I do too. Like there's a woman who saw like an orange glow. People found like pieces on the thing. That woman found the orange glow. There's absolutely no, just like that weird unidentified blip on the military radar, which other countries did not see, by the way. There's no reason to believe those are MH370. All of my data points, the debris, the oil, the visual observation of the burning plane, the audio observation of the crashing plane, all take place right where that plane was supposed to be, right where that was the only plane it could be. And that's that. So unless you're saying I saw an orange glow, therefore MH370 is here. And I'm like, well, no, like, I saw an orange glow, but Ashton agrees with me there. Like that stuff isn't the MH370 at all.
Yeah, and so obviously you don't subscribe to the idea of a suicide by the pilot either, right? That type.
No way, not a chance in the world. First of all, it's um did not fit his personality at all. The two other cases of pilot suicides I've ever heard, because it's virtually unheard of, both were false flag, psyop, whatever. Like the German wings plane, no fucking way. I cracked the code on that one too. There was a German wings plane that smashed into a mountain in Europe. Yeah, no. That I forget what it was. I think they shot that one down, but like the story was absolutely wrong. Definitely no suicide. And then there was a really famous one. There was an Egyptian Air plane that took off, I think out of Boston. And I guess it was, I don't know how it actually went down, but it was said that the pilot committed suicide. But like, um, I don't know if it was El-Sisi or his predecessor, Mubarak. I don't know whose enemies were on that plane, but a bunch of the generals who were enemies of those guys were on the plane. And the plane went down, and it was definitely not suicide either. So the suicide thing is usually wrong. And here's the thing. Here's the big problem with the whole anything happening inside terrorism, whatever, is that the official story is that the plane kept flying. That's why they won't, that's how they get away with not searching where the plane actually is. They have to say the plane kept flying. But then it would have let off these signals, not only the ping, the Inmarsat ping, but the ACARS, another like transmission that has a lot of information. So if you had an ACARS, you really would know where it was, but no more ACARS came out. No more Inmarsat pings came out either, but they're lying about that. They're saying you kept getting the pings, but how did you turn the ACARS off? That's why they say the pilot crawled around, got the ceiling off of in the cockpit, which is not something you can do. Crawled around in there, figured out how to disconnect this thing, which you can't do either, along with the other guy. There was another guy in the cockpit with him. Somebody had to disconnect that thing, which just did not happen. Did not happen.
And what
And
people who say where are the bodies?
where are all the bodies of the people on the plane? That is a great question. I don't know. I feel like they could still be in the plane. Like I just feel like when the US warship got there to sanitize the scene, because where's the black box? Where on earth is the black box? You know what I mean? So they got to it. It got to.
Yeah, without a doubt. I mean, that's the thing about a lot of these events. It's like without a doubt, like regardless of what you believe, it's and I am sold on your theory. I think out of all the theories, it definitely makes the most sense. There you can't deny there was a cover up, and that's the thing about like conspiracies that's hilarious to me because people are always like, "Oh, conspiracy theory." They throw this term around all the time, like it's a silly term to use. It's like how many historical events or news events are basically like without a doubt conspiracies? I mean, the Malaysian airline, like you said, like regardless of what people believe, everybody agrees that there was a cover up going on. Like nobody believes the official story.
Yeah.
Everybody feels like they're being lied to. You watch the Netflix, documentary on the plane, which you want.
I can't watch that stuff. It makes me crazy. I couldn't watch the Uncle Ted stuff. I cannot watch anything where I actually know the truth. I cannot stand it. It drives me crazy.
I will say the one that they did a decent job on, and I actually have them coming on.
With Danny Castellero, right?
Yeah,
Yeah, I've heard that.
Yeah,
And
Christian.
I have a lot of books on him. I've read all of that stuff from way back,
Yeah, well,
way back.
funny because I was so into that story that when I met Charlie, I thought his book was about Danny Casolero, and I'm like, wait,
Oh,
it's
I know. Yeah.
like, wait, it's not about Danny. I'm like, that
No. There
literally.
is a book by Jim Keith called The Octopus about Danny Casolaro. And it's a really short book, but man, is that Jim Keith is my favorite conspiracy researcher, basically of all time. But he died in 1999, so there's nothing new from him. But he did cover that one, and it was good. And he did a little on the Oklahoma City bombing, and he did all sorts of stuff on mind control. You've got to look into Jim Keith if you don't
I feel like
know
a
him
really good
already.
name. I've definitely
Oh,
probably ran into his work at some point, but maybe it's funny. There's so many great researchers back in the day that I forgot about.
yeah.
I'm searching.
Vietnam, the Vietnam found. This is a headline. Vietnam searchers report spotting plane debris, which they did. Um,
But yeah, I mean, like all these, it's like 9/11. It's like regardless what you believe,
Here's another one. Oil slicks offer sign that Malaysian jet crashed.
out of
Military airlines doubts about the military track of the plane. Here's what's odd about that ping. So these are just the articles. And then I wrote a fantastic article, Cracking the Code on MH370. Wrote that at the time, like in March 2014. And I had it all, but most of the stuff has been like wiped from the internet.
oh, is your article not online anymore?
This I pulled, I might have gotten this from archive.org. Yeah, I'm going to try to track it down and restore it. I've had a couple of website like wipes. So it's really, I have to go back and find it from like 2014. And they're scrubbing even the archive.org. I don't know if you've noticed that some stuff's not even there anymore. So I got to go back and find it all and copy and paste and look through all the media things. And then when that's all forward forward, I have to find other like things that didn't get any press. So it's a pain in the ass. I'm sick of it.
There
I
used to
feel like if you don't know it's all bullshit by now, not this story, but like everything. Like people
yeah,
like, did you look into that false flag? I'm like, no, I had a cocktail. I just sat around and watched the sunset because if you need to prove these false flags are still happening, you can tell from a mile away.
yeah, no, I completely agree. It's hard because people will go right back to their regular pattern of thinking so.
Yes.
And it's like it's mind-boggling. It's like I don't get it. You're like that girl who keeps getting hit by her boyfriend, but he's like, "Oh no, he's nice now. He's not. He said he's not going to do it anymore." It's like you've been
Right.
hit about 100 times. Like at some point, like you just admit that he's not going to change. He's a liar, and the government and everything else is basically that. Everything is used. That's why even the moon landing, like, oh, the moon landing, that's really out of the realm of possibility that they could have lied about that, but they've lied about everything else. I mean, this is during the era that the CIA was just killing democratically elected presidents, even our own. They were just, no problem, and yet you think like that's where they would draw the line. No, they wouldn't lie about the moon. I'm not even sure what the moon is. I have a lot of weird thoughts on what the moon is, and you know, well, my kids will ask me sometimes, like, how come we can see the moon in broad daylight? And I'm like, that's a really good question. I think about that sometimes. I'm like, why is it there? And the sun's right there. And I'm like, and according to like my understanding, like I'm sure there's some like mainstream explanation for it that we just have to have faith is the actual explanation that explains this
And you never see the back of it.
no, right? And dark side of the moon, right?
I mean, that's really weird that it rotates and revolves exactly. Seem like you imagine like how that diameter needs to be. Oh, by the way, we're gonna get an eclipse here in a minute. Like I'm probably gonna go watch the eclipse.
Yeah. We'll wrap
We'll
it up.
wrap it up. Let me just tell you a
Any
few
conspiracy
things about
theories
what
about
you were
the
saying.
eclipse? Let's
Hmm?
see. Predict. There's a lot of predictions on what's going to happen. Have
Oh,
you heard?
nothing.
Not, yeah, I don't think anything either. But people are saying
Nothing.
that like a cyber attack, they think like we're going to lose power. I'm like, yeah, I know.
Maybe. I mean, maybe because people are in control of that. So if our fearless leaders want to F with us in that particular way right now, they would. But if
You
it's
know,
organic, no.
my kids wanted to get out of school early to watch it, and I'm not a big fan of public schools anyways, or school in
Yeah,
general.
yeah, who cares? Yeah.
One less hour of brainwashing they get.
Yeah.
So I'm
Perfect.
always all for it. So I'm like, anytime we have a excuse to get them out of school, we'll get them out of school. So because I'm like, school gets in the way. You're learning. You do a lot of learning when you're not in school. So
Yeah, they can observe it themselves, which is great.
so they're going to come out of school, and so my wife calls the school and to get them out early, and they're like they have over 100 kids coming out of getting out of school early to watch this, and I've had a lot of people text message me. They're like, "Why are they making this thing such a big deal? Why is there so
Yeah.
much public, just interest in this? It's just hey, it's an eclipse. Like, what's the big deal?" And I'm like, I don't know, and I think that's
Yeah.
why conspiracy theories are coming. But I think the news will milk anything. It's just like we live in new. It always boggles my mind with snowstorms. Like people, every time there's a snowstorm,
Yeah.
like they just winter advisory, winter advisory, winter, and I'm like, it's just snow.
It's winter. It's just winter. You can be advised that once at the beginning.
Yeah. So I
But a
don't.
friend of mine wanted to come over and show me his little thing that, well, show me his apparatus to watch the eclipse. So I was going to allow that, but I never would have even thought about it, except for that he asked to do that. But I wanted, so they should show it at school then. They should be showing it at school, but that
Outside.
encourages
I'll give every
first
classes. Yeah.
yeah, firsthand information. But I want to say something about like this idea of like my he'll never hit me again is in the 70s they had all sorts of congressional hearings because that's when people were you still had the old generation before like the JFK trauma thing where they remembered that you government wasn't supposed to work like this, you could trust your own eyes. So they had all these congressional hearings church and the committee on assassinations, MK Ultra, weather modification. There was all of this stuff. And then they said, and Jim Keith gets into this, like when that happened, like all evidence of MK Ultra, which he has tons of from before, it's really shocking, is completely gone. I actually sent Mike, OBDM, Mike, one of the best because I wanted him to. I think it was about UFOs. It's like it says UFOs of the Illuminati or something because he's like it's all CIA tech. Not that there aren't UFOs, but that the stuff they show you is CIA tech they're trying to cover up. So all of this stuff went underground, all of those things, but they were all there. They were all in evidence. And then we were told that there were reforms. But of course, the opposite is obviously true. We're not freer.
Yeah, well, without a doubt. And that's the other thing. When people look back at these events, they assume that like that was how the world worked then, and it doesn't work like that. I'm like, like you can pick any point in human history.
Yeah.
The world's always worked like that. Like it's,
Yeah.
like I constantly say on the show, like there's always been people, and people want to control those people. Like now,
Yeah. And the better the tech, the better they are at it.
yeah,
That's
exactly,
the problem. That's
exactly.
the problem.
And
100%.
they could control people with force for a long time, and now they just use propaganda.
I'll throw something at you and then we'll wrap. I think all this talk about how we had just as good tech before and there was like a mass tech extinction and then we came back
Well, like the
is
World
to
Fairs, you
what?
ever hear about
Yeah,
that?
that
Chicago.
or the pyramids or whatever. Like they're like we had this tech before. We had tech before and it, this is like human cycles, millions of whatever, is to get us to think that this isn't the fucking end. I'm not a black pill person. I have no idea if it's, I know I'm going to die someday, not that long in the future, 40 years from now or whatever. So, I can't get too upset about this theoretical what's in the future, but I have a feeling this constant bombardment with we had the tech before is to get us to think, well, this is just a cycle.
Hmm.
But it may be true, but it may not be true. But I still think it's there to get us to not feel so hysterical about the tech. But the tech, of course, is the way that they can get world tyranny.
Yeah, it's weird because it's like in some ways it's like I get the argument that technology can save us. If you look at like finally establishing some mainstream understanding of free energy where people can actually, but it's like there's always going to be somebody who is going to be pulling the strings and controlling things, and that's why there's so many things that like I'm like, oh, in a perfect world, I could subscribe to that like the idea of like universal basic income, right? Like the idea that in a perfect world, like, hey, we all have things we love doing. Like I'm not doing this for money. I don't, all the things I enjoy doing, like I don't do for money. If I can just do those things that I love, do my hobby,
Right.
my passion projects, get enough money just to pay the bills and my necessities. And if people are motivated by money, they can work more and make more or whatever, and that's always going to be there. Like in a perfect world, yeah, that seems like perfect. Nobody would be struggling. We're only, society's only as strong as it's their weakest link. Let's get rid of the weak links because it benefits all of us, because it means, I don't have to walk by homeless people. It means, there's not people who are robbing others because, a lack of resources. It means that there's not people self-medicating, with drugs, or at least not as much of that. But the truth is, it's all going to come from like the central bank, and it's going to be digital currency, and they're going to control it, and then it's going to start as one thing, and eventually it's like unions. I always make the argument with unions. Unions are a perfect example. At one time during Industrial Revolution, you had these rich families just getting richer, and they weren't sharing any of the wealth, and people were working weekends or working tons of hours or whatever. Now unions have been, like, they're way worse than the corporations. I mean, they literally are. It's funny because
They're in bed with the corporations.
they're, well, that too, but the harassment, like
Oh yeah. Hmm.
small businesses like mine. I remember I ran into a video of a senator that like almost got in a fight with the head of the Teamsters or something like that, and it was, he was like, I own a plumbing company. He's like, you guys wanted me to become unionized, and you would harass my employees. You would, and I'm like, I've dealt with that. Like I personally have dealt with that. I have dealt with our we have a little family construction company. Our guys are union, but if we're in, so we're from like Western Mass near like Springfield, Massachusetts, but if we go like more Western Mass to the Berkshires, we have to hire guys from their union. And we're like, well, wait, we're all the labor's union. Like, what's the difference? Oh,
Yeah.
they're not from our hall. And these guys need work, and you're in our territory. So we'll end up having to hire somebody just to keep them off
Yeah.
our case. So it's like, oh, so like that little bit of profit margin that we have is now going to your lazy employee, which knows that he's here as long as we're
Yeah.
here.
You
And
can't fire him.
and
Yeah.
I'm like, or my other option is I let go of a loyal employee who has been with us for years, and then he goes find work somewhere else, and so, and if you go to Eastern Mass, like go towards Boston, the further Boston you go, the worse it is. Like,
Oh yeah. I'm from New York.
yeah, or New York, they'll
It's the
pick it,
worst in New York.
they'll ruin your machinery, they'll do every. I mean, it's
Yeah,
literally.
and you have to bribe the politicians, and the more the government takes over this project or that project, the more you have to have these guys in the pocket. But that's not the only problem with that total control from above, is also that they want to maintain that control. And in order to do that, and I use this example of ancient China, that they intentionally suppressed innovation because they knew that, and this is what happened, I think, with Wilhelm and Otto von Bismarck and the Industrial Revolution. They know when the people have freedom, wealth, creativity, innovation, that they no longer respect or need or support the hierarchy, which is a complete mind game. So if you read the report from Iron Mountain, that's what they say. That's like the whole thing is about war keeps people, the threat of war keeps people loyal to the government. And with nukes, which I'm not even sure exist, but they said with like these kind of weaponry, people don't even think there could be a war, that it would never happen. And then the structure of society, or at least the hierarchy, will lose power. So I think that the big threat here is that they cannot allow human beings to be creative, which is maybe what the mRNA stuff is all about. But we could go into a whole nother.
Yeah, well, I'll have to have back and just kind of riff on a bunch of things. 'Cause there's a lot of other topics I'd love to.
Yeah, but it's good. Like you and I lack a little discipline because we always want to chit chat about like what's your favorite wine at the moment or whatever. And so I feel like very proud that we got through the MH370 thing. And it's probably my best, like clearest, most um concise explanation of just why I think what I think about MH370. And I really have no answer to what other people think about it. I just feel like no one's ever convinced me that this is wrong. And I mean, and I said at the time, I was like, they will never find it.
You did
So,
you did a lot of research on this. You never put out a solo episode putting this all out.
All my shit got wiped. So I did it in 2014. I was on the radio. So I didn't have a podcast. I had a radio show and
And you
I
never
have,
revisited it?
I never went.
You never revisit the topic on your own podcast?
No, I didn't. I think I just burned out with the false flag stuff. Like the Boston Marathon bombing is another one. I have like Deborah gets red pilled. I talked to Adam about it, and I just put that on my show. So I'll put this on. This will be in my archive
Yeah.
now.
Guys,
It's
yeah.
so simple. But yeah, I never go back. That Boston Marathon bombing, man, that was nuts.
Yeah,
They
I think
killed
I
those
had
cops
Russ
and everything. Like,
Baker. I had Russ Baker, I think, on the show at the time to talk.
oh yeah, I know who he is.
But there's a lot of yeah, there's a lot of that's why those Netflix documentaries it's so
Yeah,
when the octopus
can't
one,
listen to that shit.
I'm
Yeah,
like, I can't. My wife's like, you want to watch the one out in Boston bombing? I'm like, all they're gonna do is just they're gonna leave who really is responsible for this out, and they're just gonna make you feel really bad about the victims, which we should, and and so it's just gonna be like a cry fest of like me feeling really bad for people, but never
yeah.
really, highlighting who's responsible.
I dug into probably five stories like this back in the day. I mean, it had like Ukraine, which is lost forever. All those shows are lost. But this was all 2014. So much happened in 2013, 2014. The Boston Marathon bombing, S Hook. There was just so many things. So I did them. I really did know like there's five of them. So if you ever want to do the Boston Marathon bombing in this way, just like give me an hour and I'll just tell you everything I think about that, what really happened. And there's a few, and then I'll have my archive. I don't
Yeah,
have to do it by
we
myself.
need to do. It's funny because the OKC bombing was a similar type of topic because it was actually on my birthday, April 19th, and so it was like growing up, it was always like a date that like was just
Oh yeah.
green. And I remember like being a kid and being afraid to leave the house. I'm like, could any building blow up? Like,
Yeah. Yes.
did,
When those
that thing
significant
going?
moments happen on
Yeah,
a date, it can totally freak you out.
yeah.
I didn't I didn't know about OKC till later. And I just read that Aberrations. Did you recommend it to me? Aberration in the Heartland of the Real? Or maybe it was Adam from Deborah Gets Red Pill.
Maybe. Yeah.
But
I did a show.
it's
Chris
great.
Chris Emery, who did a Noble Lie, the
Oh,
documentary.
yes, yes.
I had him
Perfect.
and I had James Corbett on, and we did
Yeah.
a double guest
Yes.
show, and we kind of because sometimes you do need these type of shows where you're like, okay, let's just put all the
Yeah.
information out there, and focus on that. Because what happens is you get like little tidbits in conversation, and then when you hear all the evidence laid out, it makes
Yes.
more sense. You're like, okay,
And it's the definitive show, and it's good for posterity. Like it is good as a historical record. But I think Wendy Painting, who wrote that book, contributed to the Noble Lie, or at least, there is very consistent. It goes hand in hand. But I don't know if she's even, boy, you should get her for you. I should never come on my show, I think, but for you.
why shouldn't she come on your show?
I don't know. I mean, you seem to get the big guns, and I just don't have I guess I don't have the charm.
I've been lucky. No, you're very charming. It's
Thank you,
the,
sir.
but I think with me, it's like I've been doing it for a while, and since 2000, I know you did radio for a while, so I'm sure you,
Yeah, but I never did interviews. Never,
yeah.
never, never. That's not
Oh,
my
okay.
thing.
So on when you did
They
your,
didn't even allow it. Yeah.
oh wow, so
Mhm.
that's a lot of pressure. You had to do
3 hours. Yeah.
Mhm.
No, it was
hours.
sucked. That's why when I lost the job, I was like, did not look back. I was sick to my stomach every single show, 8.5 years.
Well, that's why I sympathize with Alex Jones. I say sometimes I'm like, if I was talking 3 hours every day,
Yeah.
just like going like with him, he's like literally going through the headlines and talking about the worst things in the world all the time. I'm like, eventually, like I might have an hour or two where I lose it on air. Like you're gonna
Yeah.
archive every emotion, every up and down, every life
Yeah, or
situation.
hit the Tito's the minute it's over. Like that's the thing. Like I liked it when my show was later because it was like I don't drink before 5 o'clock pretty much ever. I'm like it's gotta be over. Or as like when I joke around, I'm like because it's 12 o'clock somewhere, But I don't really do that. I don't drink in the morning ever.
Yeah,
Um,
I'm the same way. When I drink, I've been so programmed to like when I drink, it's like when I'm winding down that if I start day drinking, like I'll start winding down way too early. I'm like, I got too much to do.
yeah,
And I'm like, so it's like I like to be super productive. Then at the end of the day, I'm like, I can enjoy it now. Like now,
yes, no, I agree. Then you've got like a little hump that you got to get over. Anyway, so but
Yeah, I don't
but
want to.
yes.
Yeah, go.
Oh,
I
sorry.
know you're probably in a rush to go, so I don't want. I've been holding
I'm
you
not
up.
in a super rush, but I did want to tell you about if we want to wrap on this that so I returned to that style. So I started. So I don't know if the last time we talked to you, and actually I had to cancel our last scheduled show because my mother did die after being in need of help. I like hate to call her ill because she was fine. She was just fucking old and hard to take care of. But it was such a great, like I can't even be sad about it. I had such a great experience with her, and I knew I had to kind of not I had to neglect the show, which I lost a lot. Like when you build something up, like you get that search engine and stuff like that, you have to keep it going. And I didn't. I was like, I'm just going to let God, I'm just going to trust God that I'm doing the right thing, making this a priority. And so I like really lost the thread of doing any kind of like firsthand research or deep dives or any of that. Uh, but now I forgot how much I enjoyed it. And so I'm starting to do it, but just like I did on the radio. So I do the stories of the day. I take, comments instead of calls, but I hope to get calls. I do play a few clips. Um, and it's so much better than the pressure of being on the radio. Plus the radio, people would call, they'd be listening to Rush Limbaugh all week. And then I would say, Iran does not have nukes or whatever. And they would fucking call me and just be so mean to me. So I would have to listen to Rush all week so that I would know when people were going to yell at me, like I'd have to have an answer to everything. So now that it's like friendly territory, it's just super fun and entertaining. It would be nice to have a hostile call once in a while so that you can dunk them. Like, somebody's on your turf, uninvited, like you can, and people like that. But so I would invite you to check it out and tell me what you think. And I'm open to suggestion if you think I'm not adapting the format correctly to podcasting.
It's available on your Rockfin channel and
Oh yeah, Rockfin. So I do it live on Rockfin, Rumble, YouTube, everything in video, Tuesdays and Thursdays at 2 o'clock Pacific, 5 p.m. Eastern. So that way we can all chat. And it went from just I just didn't even advertise it. So I had like a dozen people, but then immediately, I've got a couple of hundred people. So I get good comments and a little rapport. And then as soon as it's done, this is why I have a crack producer. As soon as it's done, he turns it around. He gives the I'm gonna lick your ear sound, which is my aspiration, and he gets it into my podcasting feed within an hour. So on your way home from work, you can listen to it almost live on the podcasting feed, but it is actually live on Rockfin and Rumble and YouTube. So
you
that's my
live stream on
fun.
all of them at the same time?
Yes, is that bad?
No, no, that's good. I
It's StreamYard. It's just like a business, it's like six. I don't use the super high quality Rockfin thing. I only use just StreamYard, which isn't as good because Rockfin has a better system, but I don't use it.
Yeah, I after I got kicked off YouTube, I kind of abandoned live streaming. So the only time I live stream
Good.
is on our Union Done Wanted show, and then I did
Yeah.
my 500th episode. I live
Oh yeah.
for that.
I wipe it every once in a while. As soon as I see I got a strike, I just go in and I wipe everything off of YouTube
You know
so
what's
that it can't give me another strike.
Mike said that he was getting now maybe I'm misremembering this, but I'm pretty sure he said that he had videos that he unlisted and were private that he was
Yeah.
still getting strikes for.
Yeah,
So
me too. Yeah, absolutely. Private.
that's
Private.
how can you get a
Yeah.
strike for something that's not even out there for the public?
No, and I actually lost all the shows I did with Garland on election integrity because I woke up to 3 emails like warning, strike, strike. And then I went in and I had made them all private. And I had to go in and delete them all without backup. Not that I care. I mean, it was, in the moment, I don't need it. But anyway, so yeah, it will definitely, I'll probably lose the YouTube channel. I don't care. I do like I have commercials on my podcast feed. That's how I pay for my producer. But like YouTube won't even put commercials up. So that's fine. But I
Yeah.
hope you like that. I was hoping that I was adding some value because the interviewing thing, I cannot do like the super long form interview. I was never really trained in that. But the solo stuff is like
But that's wild 'cause
analyzing the news in real time is
I
my
feel like
thing.
I could kill an hour with you like it's so easily. It's I looked at the time and I'm like, oh my God, it's like already.
Yeah, because you're letting me do all the talking. So, you know what I mean? So if you were on my show,
I'm glad
it would be the
that.
exact same thing, which would not be me interviewing you.
Well, I'm glad you said that. And I'm glad you said that because listeners, did you hear what she said? Because every once in a while I do get somebody saying that I should let the guests do more talking. But as you know, right, like it's a dance, and there's going to be certain conversations where you're like, okay, like I just happen to be more talkative. You know, this is organic. I'm
And
not.
you gotta, yeah, you gotta make it interesting. You gotta do it. And plus, we're from the East Coast where I consider interrupting people a favor. I'm helping you, man. I'm helping you. You're going on too long. You talk too slow. I'm giving you help.
Because I sometimes people interrupt me and apologize. I'm like, no, you don't understand. Like I needed interrupting.
Right. You're welcome.
Yeah. Like if not, I would have never stopped talking. So that's so funny. It is the East Coast thing, I think.
It's
Well,
good. It's like, yeah, it's good. So good.
well,
Until next time.
I'll put links to all that stuff in
Thank you.
the show description. I will definitely keep you in the loop for the next Union of the Unwanted also because
Thank you so much.
I'm doing one in another week or so.
Yeah.
And let's see what this eclipse looks like. And I'll put
I
this.
know. I'm super excited. And so my new thing is the Monica Perez show. I got my old feedback from WSB, which was very nice. And yeah, so that's good. And I look forward to seeing you again soon. Is the next one on Monday?
I'm gonna touch base with the guys because I know we had Adam Curry on recently, and then Adam Curry talked about the show on his show on the next episode, and
Ooh, that's
John
great.
and he's like we were I think I don't know if it was on air or after the show or pre the show, but at some point we were talking about how we would like to have John on too. So in that episode of No Agenda, he talks about how he's like, oh, and they said they would love to have you on too, and John's like, oh yeah, I'll go on, you know.
Oh, great.
So maybe I'm gonna hit up John and see when he can come on and join us. It's funny because that show is one of those shows that like a lot of people in our community listen to, but it's almost like they're a separate they have been a separate community because it's like they have their own little thing and people are super
I don't listen to stuff like that because it messes up my own original take.
hmm.
So I can listen to interviews like for you, but I don't want to listen to other people's opinions. Sometimes it's the same and sometimes it's different, but like you'll never hear me saying something they said because I heard them say it.
Huh.
Yeah,
Hey,
I
aren't
can't
you?
do it. And Greg Carlwitz says he does the same thing. Not about them, but he's just said, I don't want to listen to anything that I want to talk about until I've talked about it.
So he wants to go into every topic with like virgin airs and like a clean slate
Yeah,
and
original, so he can have his own impressions. Or I shouldn't speak for him, but for me, I want my own original insights, which is why I don't follow a lot of that stuff, which would be fun to follow and it would be easy, much easier, because then I would have all the ideas at my fingertips. But I want to just get like an first impression. But now that I do the show on the day of the news, nobody, I'm usually first anyway. But that's why I'm a little behind on like podcasting who's who.
yeah. That makes sense. It's funny because I wonder if I've been doing it wrong, but I'm like the opposite. I try to bring in or try to I try to observe like as many opinions and perspectives as possible, and I try to filter out, obviously mentally in my brain, like just try to filter out the things that don't make sense and try to stick with the things that do make sense, and kind of hear conflicting opinions on that, and kind of like, sometimes it could be information overload where I'm just
Yeah.
like, I've heard a lot of different things and I'm not sure where, but I think a lot of things aren't, as cut and dry and black and white as people like to make it seem. That there are a lot of good points and perspectives on many different sides of a argument.
And you're asking people questions about their stuff that is their expertise. That's why I had to used to listen to Rush. Like I had to know what that was going to come at me. I had to be able to, but as far as like my own opinions now, I don't need to do that. So I absolutely do not.
I've
But yeah.
to do a call-in show for a while just because I'm curious what would happen,
But the problem is with podcasts, only people who like you are listening. And that's not good calls. So what you want is to do like a pair up with somebody who has like a similar size following who's like a different political bent so that his callers, that's what I always think is like the hidden potential of TNT is that they have a huge audience. You inherit people who were listening to the previous show. If they alternate between like liberals and conservatives or libertarians or whatever, they could have a real call-in thing and the calls would be interesting and illicit, and I would love to achieve that, but I have yet to figure out how. The only thing I'm thinking is I need like a liberal who's got following.
That
Good luck with that.
or yeah, or even a liberal who would be interested in doing any
Yeah.
type of just work together with somebody
Yeah.
else.
A
But yeah,
truthy liberal. A
yeah,
truthy
that's,
liberal.
I mean,
Anyway.
Pasta's out there.
Yeah, no, but he's too popular now. Anyway, all right, I gotta go. I
Hey,
gotta
thanks.
go. It's
Hey,
two
thanks.
minutes to 11.
Hey, keep in touch. We'll talk.
All right.
Thanks.
Thanks, Ricky. Talk to you soon.